I felt like I did everything that you're supposed to in order to succeed. And, you know, I went to school. I actually ended up earning 2 college degrees. I played college basketball. I started a business. I was married. I had 3 kids. I did everything that the world tells you is successful. And I tried my hardest to not be like my parents, to not go down the road of addiction and drugs. And I never wanted to go to prison or be in jail. And despite doing all of the right things, I still ended up there. And so I just felt like I was lied to, like it was a lie, and I felt like it was God's fault. I think that our pain actually has purpose, and I think that that purpose is a platform for others. Why is it that I'm going through this? Why did I go to foster care? Why did I go through a divorce? And it's like, I firmly believe that God allows us to go through those things because we're now able to better minister and be empathetic and help other people who are going through the same thing. And so I've been to prison. I get to work with men and women who have been to prison. And now I know and understand what it's like. I know what the recidivism rate is. I know what it's like to have 3 hots in a cot. I know what it's like to only get mail or not get mail or no money on your books because I've been there. Whereas some people might not, they ain't never been there. They don't know. So it's like, well, pray about it, brother. But it's like, no, I've been there. I know what it's like. It was rough, man. Both of my parents were drug addicts. I didn't meet my dad in person until I was 11, but I know that he was abusive to my mom while I was a baby, that he was her pimp while she was a prostitute. And so, my life was just, it was up and down. There was lots of ins and outs and abuse and addiction. We are told to man up. We're told not to cry. We're told not to have emotions, right? And so what we do is we stuff these emotions down. We don't allow them to come up. And then when we're pushed, our buttons are pushed, we're backed into a corner. Now, all of this that's been pushed down inside, it explodes. Out comes rage, comes violence, comes anger. And many times that's the only way we know how to communicate. In Christianity, there's this picture of like, hey, Christian men are supposed to be meek and gentle and humble, and you're supposed to be a doormat is what it seems like. And so there's this weird tension as, okay, I want to be I'm a man's man. I'm a manly guy. I'm not effeminate. I'm a man. How do you process that? How do you live like that and still represent Jesus?
Action in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the Diamond Podcast. I am so excited for today's episode. You guys aren't ready for who we have today. Widely known speaker, author, social media influencer, but also a founder and lead pastor of Royal City Church in Inglewood, where I grew up. Shout out to the Wood. He's a husband, he's a father, he's a leader, and so much more. We have the one, the only, Pastor Andrew Carter in the building. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for being on here.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I first saw your face was everywhere on TikTok. I would just wake up and you're praying on TikTok. I'm like, who is this guy? And then we did a young adult night at the church I was going to, and you came to speak, and I found out there was so much more to your story than this guy who's on TikTok, praying the house down. So I kind of want to here at the Diamond Podcast, we don't like have any soft opens. We go straight in to the deep end. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to start with foster care.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of your story.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just share a little bit about your upbringing before you became the man that you are today?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Yes,
First off,
of course.
Really appreciate it. And that intro, I was like, man, who's she got on? That can't be, So thanks for the hype. I appreciate that. My upbringing was it was rough, man. Both of my parents were drug addicts. I didn't meet my dad in person until I was 11, but I know that he was abusive to my mom while I was a baby, that he was her pimp while she was a prostitute. And so my life was just, it was up and down. There was lots of ins and outs and abuse and addiction and stories like that.
Where did that lead to? Like growing up in that environment, because you're a pastor now, but from what it sounds like, you didn't grow up in this household where your parents were teaching you biblical values.
No.
A lot of the pastors we see today, they were once PKs, they had this upbringing. So coming from that background of, drug addiction and not having your parents fully in your life. Where did that lead you to as a young man?
Yeah. I mean, I was a PK. I was a pimp's kid. You feel me?
Like, wait, what pimp is preaching?
Yeah, right. So that was that's where I grew up, and I started having sex at 12. Started doing drugs. Started smoking weed, selling drugs, getting drunk, and so that's where it led me. I was a product of my environment. You put a kid in that situation, and that's all I was around. So I did what I saw my parents do. And so it just led me down the wrong road. I was violent. I was angry. I hurt people. I got into fights. I got into trouble. I stole. I was a menace to society. I was the kid that parents are like, don't bring that kid to the house, or don't hang out with him. He's bad news. I was bad news.
Yeah. I also saw in one of your preaching clips that you once spent like time in prison.
Yeah.
How was that?
You want the honest? We're the Diamond Podcast.
No,
you're honest,
we
right?
want the real honest truth. Yeah.
So I guess it depends on which time, because I've been to county jail. I've spent 90 days, 6 months. I did 18 months in prison, actual prison. County jail, terrible.
Yeah.
The food sucks. You don't get a lot of activity. You're in your cell most of the time. But prison, I was in a minimum security prison. I played basketball. I played football. We had a flag football league. We had billiards. So we shot pool. I coached 2 CrossFit classes. I fought wildfires.
In prison?
While I was in prison, yeah.
Wow.
Minimum security in Oregon. It wasn't, their tax dollars were making sure that we're comfortable.
You guys were comfortable.
We were comfy. We were having a good
What
time.
did you learn during that time? Like, because I've been to prison. Not like that.
I was like,
that sounded so bad.
Yeah.
I did ministry in prison. I did prison ministry, and the very first time I ever preached was in a prison. And I got to hear a lot of stories from people who were incarcerated. And so how was that time like for you while you were there going through those different journeys? Were you imagining like a better life outside of prison? Were you aware like my consequences led me here and I don't want to be back here? Where was your state of mind during that time?
Yeah, it was phases. So through 18 months, initially I'm mad at the world, and I'm blaming everybody else. There's no accountability. There's frustration. You're trying to do everything you can to get out. And then the reality sinks in. And it's just like, you're not going anywhere, buddy. Like you're stuck. This is what it is. And once that realization hits, then it's kind of like, okay, let me do my time. How am I going to do my time? I can do the time, or the time can do me.
Yeah.
And so I devoted myself to journaling, to writing, to reading. I had no like spiritual walk. So it wasn't a faith walk. I was mad at God. So I was like, I turned my back on God. I started researching other religions. I went and I sat in on Catholic services. I sat in on Muslim services. I even went and did a sweat with Native Americans. So I was like trying to figure out who I was during this time. Yeah. But I did a lot of self-reflection and growth, personal growth, things like that.
Yeah. So not to skip ahead, but to skip ahead, how did you find the Lord? Like, what was that moment of conversion for you?
So you got to go back.
Okay.
So I gave my life to Jesus at 17.
Okay.
So I said yes to the Lord when I was 17 years old. But like my environment didn't change. Mm-hmm. So I went back home, and at home I had weed and drugs and stuff like that. But so I said yes to Jesus. I know that the Holy Spirit made its home inside of me, but I didn't have mentorship. I didn't have discipleship, leadership. I didn't get into a good church. And so, for the rest of my days, it was me wrestling with like, man, I want to smoke. I smoke. Why am I so paranoid? I wasn't before. I'm drinking. Why am I not getting so drunk like I used to? Or why am I getting so angry or sleeping around? And now it's like, well, why do I feel so gross? I never did before, saying this prayer. It's like Jesus, he messed up my fun. He messed up all my sin, essentially. And so, yeah.
So while you were spending that time, talk to me about your anger towards the Lord, because you weren't questioning necessarily the existence that God was there.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out like, what religion do I want to place myself in? But tell me about like that those conversations maybe you had, whether they were internally or to God, where you were in that middle, like I'm frustrated.
Yeah. Well, I felt like I did everything that you're supposed to in order to succeed. And, I went to school. I actually ended up earning 2 college degrees. I played college basketball. I started a business. I was married. I had 3 kids. I did everything that the world tells you is successful. And I tried my hardest to not be like my parents, to not go down the road of addiction and drugs. And I never wanted to go to prison or be in jail. And despite doing all of the right things, I still ended up there.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like I was lied to, like it was a lie, and I felt like it was God's fault. So I was mad. And again, I realize now that it wasn't. However, like that just pissed me off. I was mad.
Yeah. So you already knew the Lord. When you got out, what was that moment that shifted for you where you decided, I'm going to change my entire life around?
Yeah, it was almost another 18 months after I got out of prison.
Okay.
So for the first year out of prison, I got divorced. So I had been married since I was 19, 14 years marriage, went through a divorce. And so for the first time since I was 19, I was single. I'd been in a marriage. So the next 18 months, I went just crazy trying to figure out who I was and, dating different women and whatnot, kind of exploring. I guess I was just sowing my oats. I was out there wilding out. And so it wasn't until the end of that 18-month period, I felt empty. Like I had gone off doing whatever I wanted. I was empty. I was broken. None of it satisfied. It almost like Solomon says. He's like, it's a chasing after a wind. You just can't catch it. And it was after that I started going back to church. I started dabbling. I started opening my Bible a little bit, and I started going back. And all of that led up to this viral TikTok video that kind of reopened my eyes to what God told me over a decade before.
What was the TikTok video that went viral?
So I pointed at these boxes. Okay, so it's a video that's going, and I pointed to boxes, and it said things God's carried me through. And I pointed at a box that said prison, one said foster care, one said divorce, and then the last box, and basically, and everything else. And so I posted that video. I had like 200 followers, and the next morning I woke up, and there was 15,000 followers. Wow. Like the video went viral. And mind you, this is the first time I've ever shared anything about God. Before all my TikToks and stuff, it was about me working out. I was allergic to shirts. I was just, you know what I mean? It was all fitness stuff. You know what I mean? Because that's where I was at. I was into the health industry. And so this goes viral of everything. And so I'm reading through like the comments and one of the messages, the DMs, and a guy said, Andrew, I've been to prison, I've been to foster care, and I've been divorced. And he said, last night I was going to kill myself. But I saw that you pointed at a box that said, God carried you through. If he can do it for you, he could do it for me as well. And right there, I was just like, oh, wow. Previously, there was a prophetic word spoken over my life about 15 years earlier. And it was that I had words of gold that I'd speak to millions of people about Jesus and I'd be in ministry. And that night, when I read that message, or that morning, I realized that prophetic word was coming true through social media.
Yeah. How many years had gone by from that prophetic word to that video?
So I was like 23, 24, so almost 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk to me. I want to kind of dive into, I've found myself in spaces where similarly doing everything right. Why does everything feel so wrong? God, what's going on? Are you upset with me? And I find myself trying to escape and run away from the Holy Spirit and run away from God. And I was just praying this the other day, and I'm going to out myself. This is how I talk to God. I was like, Lord, I feel like, the song Chingy, every time I try to leave, something keeps pulling me back. I was like, why? Every time I try to escape, it's like I can't. Did you feel that? Like you were trying to find your vices and working out or the things that culture will say, this will help you feel satisfied. What was that thing that made you say, I'm going to dabble in my word again, or I'm going to try God again? What was that thing that caused you to essentially try God again?
I think it was, I don't want to say heartbreak, because it wasn't heartbreak. It was just like another failed relationship. It was doing the same thing over and over, and it just kept ended the same. And so I was like, okay, something has to change. I'm a results-oriented guy. So if I eat good and exercise 5 to 6 days a week, I expect there to be results. I better look good with my shirt off, right? In a couple of months. And so it's the same thing as like I'm putting in this effort, this energy, this time into relationship, into these different projects and things, and nothing was coming back. And so I was at the end of my rope, and I'm just like, you know what? Let me try Jesus again. Like, let me come back to the Lord. Like, it's just, I've tried everything, and I don't like where I'm at. I'm going to go back to the Lord.
Yeah. I think that's so common for a lot of people who have once had a relationship with the Lord, and disappointment has come, right? Like, I'm disappointed, I'm heartbroken, whatever the reason is. But some people have hesitation, like trying God again, because they may attribute God to their disappointment. What would you tell that person who is like in that same position where it's like, I feel like my relationships have failed. I feel like my career's not going how it's supposed to be. I don't know who I am. I've asked God in the past to help me out. He hasn't. Like, screw this. What would you tell that person who's in that space?
Oh man, that his no's have love written all over him. And so maybe that relationship didn't work because you were dating Jeffrey Dahmer. You know what I mean? Or you know, maybe maybe it didn't work because he was protecting you from heartbreak and being cheated on or being beaten up. Like, you know what I mean? And so maybe he kept you from that job opportunity. But, you know, it's his divine protection or redirection. And now that I am serving the Lord, all of the things that I desired and prayed for, and at one point was let down and experienced that discouragement, it was for my best. It was for my protection. And God has given me, I feel like I was going to preach right there. and God has given me everything that, and then some that I thought that I wanted, just in a different way. He works in ways that are beyond our understanding.
Yeah. And that's the difficult, but also the beauty when it comes to walking with the Lord. There is an element where it's like, sometimes it's not going to make sense in the moment. But when you look back, hindsight, you can say like, that was necessary and that needed to happen. I'm so glad the Lord said no for some of the things. I would have been married to some interesting men if the Lord answered my prayer. Let me just say that. I am grateful He has protected me. I think the moment I was living with this woman for a period of time, and we were just going through it. And I kept reminding her and myself, like, God is good and He wants good things for us. So where we're at, if it's bad, that's not God's intent. The desire is for us to live an abundant life, but He might be having us go through this for a reason. Why do you feel like the Lord, because you could have had any story, any upbringing. Why do you feel, or do you feel like the Lord brought you through your childhood in that way for a specific reason?
100%.
Why?
I think that everybody goes through it for a specific reason. I think that our pain actually has purpose, and I think that that purpose is a platform for others. And so I was just on the phone as I was coming over here doing counseling, ministering, and somebody was wrestling with that same question of, why is it that I'm going through this? Why did I go to foster care? Why did I go through a divorce? And it's like, I firmly believe that God allows us to go through those things because we're now able to better minister and be empathetic and help other people who are going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I've been to prison. I get to work with men and women who have been to prison. And now I know and understand what it's like. I know what the recidivism rate is. I know what it's like to have 3 hots in a cot. I know what it's like to only get mail or not get mail or no money on your books, because I've been there. Whereas some people might not, they ain't never been there. They don't know. So it's like, well, pray about it, brother. But it's like, no, I've been there. I know what it's like. And so I think that God allows those for us to be better listeners, better teachers, preachers, pastors, mentors.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned something earlier where you talked about like, you were kind of upset with God while you were in that phase of life. And I kind of want to dive into the mind of a man when it comes to like rage or anger in correlation to surrender. I know there's a lot of my male friends who have this internal anger for whatever reason it may be. But there's this hesitation to surrender it to the Lord. Did you feel a little bit of that where it's like my rage is getting the best of me, or you've had a difficulty in surrendering your emotion to the Lord? Women are very emotional creatures. And I think sometimes culture downplays the fact that men too go through emotions. We don't fully allow men to go through their emotions, so they have a difficult time knowing how to process their emotions. Have you felt any of that? Do you feel like that's something that men go through?
Oh, I feel like you're clocking my tea right now. Yeah, absolutely. From a young age, we are told to man up. We're told not to cry. We're told not to have emotions, right? And so what we do is we stuff these emotions down. We don't allow them to come up. And then when we're pushed, our buttons are pushed, we're backed into a corner. Now, all of this that's been pushed down inside, it explodes. Out comes rage, comes violence, comes anger. And many times that's the only way we know how to communicate. Yeah. And so as a man, as a follower of Jesus, yes, because even in Christianity, there's this picture of like, hey, Christian men are supposed to be meek and gentle and humble, and you're supposed to be a doormat is what it seems like. And so there's this weird tension as, okay, I want to be a man's man. Like I'm a manly guy. I'm not effeminate. I'm a man. Yeah. How do you process that? How do you live like that? And still represent Jesus. And so, there's this, it's tough to surrender and to let that go. It sometimes feels weak or you're losing a part of yourself. I think even our anger and our violence becomes so familiar and so comfortable. And now you're asking us to let that go. It's vulnerable.
Yes.
You feel naked. And so, it's tough.
Do you think the church has done a good job at helping men process their emotion?
I think the church is doing a better job.
Okay. Yeah.
But historically, no. I think historically the church has done a lot of damage when it comes even to gender roles, when it comes to what it is to be a man, how to lead like a man. I think that, yeah.
Because it's so interesting when I look at Jesus, who we all, like, what would Jesus do? We try to model ourselves after Jesus, and I look at how emotional he was.
Right.
Like a lot of the times when he was led to do a miracle, the Bible says he was moved with compassion. Yeah. He cried in front of his friends. He expressed emotion. Where do you feel like there was this? I agree, the church is doing a better job, but where do you feel like the church got that from? Where it's teaching men to have this like hyper masculine, man up, take up your cross and die, which is what we do, but we teach men to kind of suppress emotion. Like our job is to not worry about that. Where do you think that came from?
I think that comes from the world. We've allowed the world to infiltrate the church. We need to renew our minds, right? We need to transform our thinking and not allow worldly living and ideologies to get into the way that we're moving. And it happens too on the other side. Like feminism has crept into the church, right? And then there is that toxic masculinity that's crept into the church. We allow, people with the mic and podcasts to sometimes be what ministers to people more than the actual church. And so we get a lot of voices and a lot of people who are speaking into people, and they're holding it as truth rather than just opinion. And then they start living that out.
Yeah. How did you wrestle with, I could imagine with everything you went through growing up before church planning, how did you wrestle through like discipline and obedience and even like self-doubt? Because I could imagine I have a lot of friends who like let their past define them. Like, I went through all these things. This is why my life isn't this way, or this is why the Lord's not using me for XYZ. A lot of people allow their past to shape their worldview and their lens moving forward. Did you wrestle with any moments of like self-doubt, or you wrestled with being obedient to the Lord once you decided to try him again?
There's a lot I want to.
Go ahead, go in.
That's good.
The floor is yours.
I still wrestle with, inadequacy, with imposter syndrome. I question, why would God allow somebody like me to lead the church? I'm terrified of it. I'm terrified of the consequences that come with not leading well. As a teacher and as a pastor, you're going to be judged more harshly. And so that's a daily wrestling. But I think that also drives my obedience. And so I say it's a long answer because I was in foster care. When I was in foster care, it was the best experience that helped shape me and helped me to become the man that I am today. And the reason why is, growing up with my mom and dad, life was unstable. It was crazy. And so because of that, I was unstable and crazy. When I was in foster care for a year, my sophomore year, it was the longest time that I'd ever had consistency. So when I went home, I didn't have to worry about the lights being on or my mom with a needle in her arm, passed out or OD'd. I had consistency. And so my sophomore year, I had a 4.0. It was the best that I've ever done in high school, the year before I dropped out of my freshman year. So now good grades. I had consistency and discipline. And so I realized that if I have those two things in my life, I can thrive.
Yeah.
And so really a kid is a product of their environment. You change the environment, you change the way that I was moving and operating. And so now as an adult, I look for ways to be disciplined and consistent. I try to find ways to control my environment. So,
What does that look like practically?
Oh, I get up at 4 every day, 7 days a week.
Jesus.
4
I'm in my
a.m.
like 10th dream at 4 a.m.
Oh, are you serious?
Lord Jesus. 4 a.m. is crazy.
4 a.m., 7 days a week, every day of the year.
Wow.
Yeah. So I get up, I spend time in my word, prayer, devotion. I go to the gym. I'm at the gym by 5. So this morning I was at the gym at 5, did legs, and I drove to the track. I ran 2 miles. I came home. I did some social media posting, things like that. Did some sermon prep, and then I headed over here. But like every single day, I'm up at 4. And my favorite quote is this, okay? Abraham Lincoln says, if you give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 sharpening my axe. And so for me, before I attack the day, I spend the first part of my day getting all of the things that I need to do done. My exercise is done, my devotion's done, my prayer's done, sermon prep, all that stuff's done. And now I can be a better husband, father, pastor, friend, whatever.
I feel convicted. I feel like I just need to wake up early. You have half your workday done, and I'm like, what's for breakfast?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. Also, one thing that I'm noticing, I love that you're being very honest and saying like you still wrestle, you're still wrestling with feelings of inadequacy. Like you're still in process.
Yeah.
And thank you for being honest with that. And I want to kind of land right there when it comes to conversion, in our faith. A lot of people think conversion is an event. My life was changed. I became a Christian. I became a follower of God. And this was the moment when. And I see it more as a process. It's a process of sanctification. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Like, I think when people are trying to see what their relationship with God looks like, there's this pressure to have it right tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's a pressure to be who they want to be tomorrow, to have their routine and their disciplines figured out tomorrow. But there's this reality that conversion is a process. It's going to take time for you to become the person that God's called you to be. Can you speak to that person who may feel that pressure to have it all right tomorrow?
Yeah. It's just like with any relationship. You invite Jesus into your life, you're going to know him better the more time that you spend with him, through prayer, through devotion, through worship and praise, and just sitting in his presence. And so if I get saved and I'm converted, I put my faith in Jesus, but then I don't spend time with him. I don't call upon him. I don't read his word. I don't get to know who he is. I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to mature. And it's going to prolong this sanctification process. And so the more time I spend, the more that I pray, the more that I devote time, energy, and effort and resources to knowing him, the more that I'm going to mature and grow. And so I think that you can quicken your journey. I think that you can mature faster.
Yep.
But it's a journey. It's just that.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
You're very like, as you explained your rhythms of life, that's what it is. You're very like spiritually grounded man in a day and age where it's difficult to be. What does, like, if you could put bullet points to it, a spiritual, and I'm asking partly because I'm single, and I evaluate, part of my evaluation process is, what does this man's faith look like? And I've run into this pattern that I've seen where men in their mind, it's like, well, I go to church a couple Sundays. Like, I pray every now and then. And in their mind, they equate that to being spiritually grounded. What would you say a spiritually grounded man looks like?
Oh, a man who is picking up his cross daily and is dying to himself. He's mortifying his flesh. A man who fasts, a man who prays, a man who serves in his local church on a regular basis, a man who gives, is generous to the local body. A man who's died to himself and his his sole focus is the establishing of God's kingdom.
Yeah.
Like Matthew 6:33, right? Seek first the kingdom and all of its righteousness. Like that is what a man does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people want, because when you continue that verse, seek first his kingdom in righteousness and everything else will be added to you.
Right.
Everybody wants things to be added to them
For sure.
before doing the seeking, before desiring to know God. And I've noticed that when I choose to seek God first and his kingdom, that my desires begin to shift and they begin to change.
Yeah.
What were some of your desires that you had pre-Jesus? Like, this is the type of life I wanted to live. What were some of those desires that
Can
you
we
had
come
in
back to
mind?
that? Can we come back to that?
Yes,
I want
we
to say
can.
I want to say this.
Go ahead.
You're talking about men,
Yes.
right? You're talking about men. What I see, especially in LA, right? I want to talk
LA is
about
a different
I want to
beast.
just talk about this.
Go ahead.
Is that a lot of guys will attach a church that they go to in their bio, or they'll say that they're Christian or that they love Jesus, but really the heart of it is, it's like, are you willing to give your life for Jesus? It's not something that you see. It's rare. What a lot of people are doing is they're attaching Jesus, or they're using Jesus to get what they want. And they don't really want Jesus, they want a genie. And so this is their form of this genie. Is like, okay, well, I'm gonna be about my career and my business, and then I go to church a couple of times, and when they pray, they're just asking God to bless what it is that they're doing. They're not actually seeking out God's will and plan. And I see this, I pastor in LA, and so people are coming and they want counsel, and what I see is they don't have the spiritual disciplines. They're not really grounded, and they're serving God for all of the wrong reasons. They want him to bless their mess rather than them to fix the mess.
How do you pastor them through that? What's the first thing you tell them to do?
Oh man, the first thing I would tell somebody like that to do is I would ask, are you connected in a community group? What does that look like? Because these are the same people who will stay out in the world. They're still going to the networking events late night. They're still out, getting bottle service. They're still doing the things of this world. They haven't surrounded themselves by other Christians who are submitted to the lordship of Jesus. And so, again, the Bible says that bad company corrupts good character. So these people, I believe that they have good character, but they haven't changed the company that they keep. They're still in the world, even though they're not of the world. So I'm always asking, who are you hanging out with? What are you doing? What does your downtime look like?
Yeah.
So,
And do you feel like they're men, especially LA men are different, and you're absolutely right. Do you think there is this, people attribute being a godly man to being soft? Like me going to church, lifting my hands, me surrendering, me picking up my cross daily, like that's soft. Do you feel like men have that in your counsel and your conversations with men? Do you feel like that's why men might be a little slower to surrender? Because it's like, men are built to, like, a lot of them like control, they want to be the lead. They want to lead. I think a lot of those desires are God-given, to be the leader, to take care. But when it comes to their relationship with God, that's God's role. So do you feel like there's a level of like, I'm a man, like, and Christianity feels a little soft?
not necessarily. No.
Okay.
No, I think that a lot of the guys, they just don't want to let go of the life that they've been living. They don't want to release control to their rhythm of playing video games all day. They don't want to release their control of, having to provide someone or to answer to somebody else where they're at. They can't be in the gym all day without checking it. Like there's this level of independence that I think that they want to hold on to and they refuse to let go of, especially in LA, because they're also waiting for the next option. They might have somebody who's great, but there's always something that's like, what's bigger, what's better, what's new. So I think more than the weakness of Christianity, especially in this area and in this context, I think they're just waiting for, like, is there something bigger or better coming? So
how do we combat that? How do you combat that in a culture that's so fast, in LA that's rooted and grounded in money and fame and influence and all of the things that are shiny? Like, how do we as believers guard ourselves from letting culture kind of influence our lens?
Biblical literacy, reading the Word of God. I don't think that there's anything new that needs to be.
Yeah.
I think that biblical illiteracy is at an all-time high. People know Philippians 4:13, right? Oh, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But I don't think people are actually going deep. They don't understand context. They don't understand the word. And so I think that if we can get and we can preach the word and we can get the word into people's lives, I believe Holy Spirit will start that transformation and that sanctification process that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But they need to go deeper. That right now they're just eating, Uncrustables, but they need to get some actual meat and
Some
potatoes.
Lunchables, yes.
Yeah.
You said that you had tried all the things that the world could offer you, which a lot of men and women don't want to let go of that stuff. Why? What did God give you that the world and culture couldn't?
So everything that I thought I wanted, he gave to me above and beyond, but it just looked different.
Okay, go deeper into that.
I was looking for love and acceptance. And so I tried to find love and acceptance in relationship and sleeping around, in success, and influence those things. But coming into a real relationship with Jesus, I've never been more loved or more accepted. He's loved me at my absolute worst, when I was at my most unlovable. And so that right there is the satisfaction of acceptance. Traveling. I wanted to travel. When I was in prison, I used to read different newspapers and magazines, and I would circle the places that I wanted to go. When I was in prison, I didn't have a passport. I had never left the country. And so a part of my desire was like, I want to see the world, right? Especially when you don't get to see anything. Yes. You're like, I want to see the world. And so that first 18 months, I did everything I could in my power to try to travel and move. I think the farthest I went from where I was at was Vegas. I didn't get super far. But when I surrendered to God, I've traveled the world. I've been to Israel 3 times in the last 3 years. I've been to Africa, to El Salvador, Central America, all over. And there was this desire to travel and to see God's creation. But by my own strength, by my own power, could only get me so far. But when I fully surrendered, he was able to take me to places I never imagined that I would go.
It's like that meme that you see online where there's a little girl that has a tiny teddy bear.
Yes.
And she doesn't want to let it go.
Yeah.
And she's standing in front of Jesus and he has this huge teddy bear. It's like, I don't want to let this go. And it's almost, part of it is because we have limitations. God can honestly do far more than we can ask, think, or imagine. So it's like, I'm not going to let this go because I feel like this is the best that I can get. Right. When God really is like, if you just give me this in exchange, I'm going to give you something better. It might not be what you want, but I guarantee you it's going to be much better than you can imagine. And I've had to deal with that in my own even with a lot of I'm single because I did a dating rap and you commented on it.
Yeah.
But a lot of my friends as I did my dating rap, it opened up a lot of conversations online. And a lot of my friends don't want to let go relationship that are toxic, relationships that are toxic. And I asked them, there's nothing good coming out of this. Yeah. Why are you holding on to it so tight? And it's because they feel like they can't this is the best that I'm going to get.
Wow.
And it shows how limited our view is of God. Mm-hmm. And when we truly, I believe, understand the nature of God and that everything he does is good, that he wants abundance for us. I think that teddy bear we hold on to so tightly, whether it's a job, whether it's relationships, whether it's our own desires, when we recognize his nature is good, I can trust him with this, that process of surrender becomes a little bit easier.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people don't get to experience the big teddy bear, for analogy's sake, because they're holding on to this.
Exactly.
This thing. What did that freedom feel like for you when you were like, God, here's everything, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna give you everything back tenfold. How was that feeling like?
It's indescribable, and I'm still experiencing it. It's something, that just keeps getting bigger and better. And again, I'm not trying to sell if you just give everything, then God's just going to bless everything that you do. Not always. No prosperity gospel. But I would say that, even further than the material things or relationships, the work that he does inside, the things that I've seen and done, being in prison and foster care, growing up the way that I did, I think that the biggest transformation is that I don't look like what I've gone through. Like that in and of itself is the greatest gift. I don't have this heaviness. There's no regret in my life. Like there is a peace that doesn't make sense. Like I should be cooked. I should be on drugs. I should be doing some wild stuff out there, but it's because of Christ. Like there is this peace on my life, and there's a wisdom, and there's just so much that he does. And that's the biggest teddy bear of them all.
Yes.
That's the biggest gift. Is that I'm
You're different.
I'm free. Yeah, I'm different.
Yes. Yeah. How would you stated you started posting about what God has carried you through online, and it went crazy viral. And a lot of your videos after that did. How do you guard yourself from, because there's a lot of influencers. There's a lot of Christian influencers that have a viral moment or know what people like online, and their Christianity starts to become a bit performative. Like I do this because I know people are going to see it, or I do this because I know this is going to get likes. I'm going to post my picture of my Bible and my matcha, or post me, what advice would you tell somebody where the Lord's given you influence? The Lord has blessed you online. How would you guide somebody to stay guarded from it turning into being performative?
Yeah. I think the grace on what happened with me is that what took off was me being raw, honest, and transparent. So for the very first time, when I pointed at those boxes, I was ashamed of going to prison. Like at the time I was single. I was trying to the last thing you want to do is say, hey girls, I've been to prison.
Right.
Right? I've been in foster care. I've been through divorce, got 2 bankruptcies.
And I'm single.
Yeah. Like holler at your boy, like, no, you're a walking red flag. That's not a good look. And so I was at a place where I'm just going to be me. I'm tired of lying and hiding. And so with that said, what has worked for me is honesty and transparency. And so if that's what you build your audience on is honesty and transparency, the moment you get performative, and I have, I've tried, I haven't been guarded. I was like, oh, this is working well. Let me do this. It's like, I believe in God the Father. So I've done those voiceover videos early on. You won't find them because they're all archived. You ain't gonna find them.
I'm about to go on Instagram immediately after this.
Don't even bother. They're gone. But what I'm saying is I've gotten to that place of okay, what's working for the algorithm. And, there was no success. There was no anointing. There was no oil. There was no grace on any of that. All of those videos tanked. And so, but it's like, hey, but when I'm me and who God made me to be, and I'm operating based on the Spirit, then there's success. And so really, God hasn't blessed the performative arts in my life. I'm not able to, so I have to. And so I would just encourage people it's okay to be encouraged, to get what's the word that I'm looking for? To be inspired by content, maybe to follow some trends, mess around. But again, run from performative Christianity. It doesn't help anybody.
When I got off the television show I was on, I found myself in this tension of because I went from posting nothing about, only things about church related stuff, because I worked in ministry. And then I'm on CBS, I get this influence, and it became all this CBS stuff. And I started to feel oh, well, I need to start posting Christian things so people remember I'm Christian. And it became I need a post to show people who I am. And it started to feel a little bit I started to find myself well, why am I posting this? And I found myself with these thoughts of, I need to make sure I'm going to church. I need to make sure after I got off of Big Brother, my rhythm of life completely changed. So I'm trying to figure out my rhythm of life and this season that God's put me in. But I felt this need to tick off this checkbox to make sure that I remain Christian. Wait, I got to get back to this. So I'm Christian. And when I was driving back home from church, I went to visit a church out here in LA, and I was driving back home, and I felt like God said, I didn't draw you near to me to become an actor. You didn't become a Christian to become an actress. So get away from that. But I had to first be honest with I feel like I need to go to church. I became very rigid in religion to prove to God, I'm still your kid. You know what I'm saying? Wow. And I feel like a lot of us, especially younger believers, feel this need to, the way to prove that I am Christian is in this checkbox of what I do, not necessarily who I am. And you're explaining like the biggest teddy bear of everything is I'm a changed man. It's stuff that you can't really see externally. It's this internal thing. So that's so great to hear, because I think a lot of with the rise of influence and everybody's a pastor, everybody's a prophet and prophetess. Because it gets them influenced really quick. And I think it gets really dangerous when we get into that mindset. Yeah. But I want to switch with a little time that we have left and talk about Royal City Church. What made you plant a church? Because like I helped plant a church in Orange County a few years back. You have to be a little crazy.
Yeah.
Not a little. You have to be a lot crazy. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. And after that, I said, oh, no, I'm good. Anybody who is a church planter from the ground up, bless their entire heart. What made you plant Royal City?
Oh, I was naive. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. So a part of the influence, what happened is that we got high on our own hype, and people were telling us that we should be pastors. And we were just like, yeah, we should. That's a great idea. What does it take to plant a church? And so then we prayed about it, and God confirmed it. Yeah. And then we asked some people if they saw that on our lives, and they were crazy enough to say yeah. And so we just jumped right in. And literally from the time that we got the call to plant a church, it was July 21. We had our first service October 21st. So like just a few months of preparation, no launch team. It was me, my wife, and Jesus. And so we had some money saved. I think we had like 10 grand saved up.
Which in church planting world
that's nothing.
Especially, and it was in Inglewood is when you start.
Right.
Yeah, pennies.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we started doing meeting once a month. So it was 21. We met once a month. Everything else was done online, and we did that for a year. And then we expanded and did 2 services a month for the second year. Yeah. And then we launched full time in 24. So yeah.
How's that been?
It's been great. After going full time, we had to expand to 2 services. So we've seen some great growth, a lot of favor, a lot of influence in the city in just a really short amount of time.
What becoming a church planner and a pastor? What is one thing you learned about yourself in that season where you're like, I didn't know that about me? What did the Lord reveal anything new to you entering this new phase of life?
Not really. No, I don't think that there's anything new. I really feel like God has prepared me all my life for this moment, unknowingly, like unbeknownst to me. I had no idea that this is what. So I owned a gym before I was a pastor, and building a gym is very similar to building a church, and I didn't know that. Yeah. I didn't know that. So I can look back and I'm like, oh, he's been orchestrating this from the beginning. So I really haven't learned anything new about myself, but I can see God's hand in the entire thing.
Yeah, which is important when you're church planning. One thing you want to see is God's
hand. His hand should be in it.
All up in it. And I'm sure that you've seen, as we all, online, some of the public downfall of pastors and leaders.
Yeah.
There's been a rise of it.
Yes.
In the last couple years. And you stated earlier in this conversation that, you have this fear of the Lord because teachers and preachers are going to be held to a higher standard. That is biblical. That is true. And it feels like every time I go on the internet, I'm like, another one.
Yeah.
Another one bites the dust.
Right.
Why do you feel like there is this rise of people who have had great influence that the Lord has used, that something happened? Like, what do you feel like is happening or they're lacking that causes them to once be here and then be knocked down?
I think it could be a number of things. One of them being a lack of accountability, not having people in their lives who can talk to them plainly, who can call out the areas that they might be struggling in. If somebody sees something, them not having the authority or being scared or fearful to take it to them or to expose those things early on. And so what leaders like to do is they like to insulate themselves. And the bigger their ministries get, the bigger their platform or their pedestal rises. And then the more yes and no, yes men that they will put or position around them. And so, if somebody doesn't like something, they're fired or they dismiss them, and they create just this board of people who are just nodding their head yes and elevating this position of pastor, and that allows them to isolate and kind of get away with stuff that is happening in the dark.
How are you guarding yourself from that?
I think there's a special grace on my life for that. So one thing I've noticed, and this might not be true for all situations, but a lot of guys, you even mentioned it, they come from church background. They come from pastors' kids, or they grew up in ministry. They've spent a lot of their time in ministry. So in their mind, they don't know what it's like to experience some of the things that they're dabbling with, the sex and the drugs or the money. And for the first time in their life, right, they get a little influence, they get a little power. They've never had that kind of money. You know, they've never had that power as a leader where women are looking up to them and throwing themselves. So what I'm super grateful of is that I've had a lot of sex in my life before I was a pastor. I did a lot of drugs. I lived in the world for the majority of my life. So there's no question of like, hey, I wonder what it's like to have just random sex with people, because I did. So I'm not missing out on anything. I know that it's empty, that it's broken, that there's nothing but guilt and shame. So for me, I am so happy with a wife who I can be with, right? Whenever, you know, I'm lucky to have my kids. I've got 5 amazing kids that all look to me. I really feel like that season of exploration, it's gone. Like there's no question in my mind. I've done it. So yeah, if that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Speak to really quick do you have a lot of young people attending Royal City?
Yeah.
Single?
Yeah.
I'm not saying this because I'm about to show up and be like, hey, hello, I'm here.
on Sunday, pull up. Right. But we do.
I set that up so bad. But I'm saying like there's a lot of single people in Los Angeles, single Christians who are trying to figure out like, you know, who desire relationship. They desire community, and we kind of idolize marriage. But I've found in my singleness that the process of becoming the woman that God's called me to be before he even brings me my man is so important. So I'm less focused on what my marriage will look like in the future, and I'm more focused on who is the woman that I want to be. Can you speak to the singles who love God, who find dating to be difficult, who are in process? They're in this in between. Like, I'm not where I want to be, settled down with the family in good community. I'm not where I used to be, but I'm not where I want to be. I'm kind of in this middle. Can you speak to those who are in process? What piece of advice would you give them?
Oh, man. I would tell them, like you said, to get in community. Get around Bible-believing Christians and stop falling for the hype. Stop jumping at every person who shows you a little bit of interest. Really get to know people. And I think that's where singles might fall short, you know, is they're lonely. They're thirsty. It's dry out here. You know what I mean?
It's the Sahara Desert, let me tell you. It's dry.
It's dry. And so it's like, stop. How do you say this? Stop getting into relationship with peasants when you're called to be royalty. And
hold on, no.
Okay.
You can't move forward with that.
Okay.
Say that one more time.
Yeah. So stop entertaining peasants when you're called to be royalty. Too many people are settling for far less than what God called them to, and they're jumping into relationship because there's a little bit of interest, but they don't really know the person. And then they waste, the talking stage, the dating stage. They waste all of this time and pouring themselves out into somebody else when during that time they could have been working on themselves or positioning themselves better to be where God has them.
That's a whole word. That's a whole word. And there's also some people who are peasant living and feel like they're royalty, and we need to do some evaluation.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like you want a 10, but you're really like a 3 in your heart.
You got champagne taste and a beer wallet, I know what you mean, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, to close us out, tell me about some of the books that you've written. You have The Privilege of Prayer, The Prayer First Challenge, and 2 31-day devotionals. The struggle is real, but so is God.
Yeah.
That's what you started with, right? The
sure.
devotionals?
Yeah.
And then you did the prayer. Tell me about the process of those books.
Yeah, so the privilege of prayer is really just kind of a story about how prayer has helped me in my life. And so I share a little bit of my story, some of the things we've touched on here, and how I recognize God has been in it and through it and all around it the entire time. And then I just really push prayer. I think that we do not look at prayer the way that it should be, especially believers. You want to be a rooted and grounded believer. You got to pray more than just over your Chick-fil-A and before you go to bed.
Yep.
Like prayer is communication with God, the creator of all things. And sometimes you have not because you ask not. Sometimes you're not seeing breakthrough because you're not communicating with the one who's going to break through. And so we need to do a better job of realizing that prayer isn't this, it's not this burden, but it's a privilege.
Yeah.
It's a privilege.
Yeah, that's amazing. Where can people find your books?
On Amazon and any major retailer. Yeah.
Y'all better get the books. You see this man's dropping wisdom, okay? Get the books. I want to end with this question. To the person that is in process, who is becoming, who feels like they're being cut, brought through the fire. They're not this diamond yet, but they're in the process of being refined. What piece of encouragement would you give that type of person?
Yeah, if that person's in the fire, I would say that Jesus is in the fire with you. Like, don't forget that he is with you every step of the way. He will not leave you. He will not forsake you. And everything that you go through. I look to Romans 8:28. All things work together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purposes. And he loves you. You're not in it alone. And sometimes the pain and what you're going through is exactly what you need to go through in order for him to refine you, right? To produce that godly character inside of you and to pull out who he's trying to create you to be.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
If this has blessed you, share with a friend. There's so much gold in this conversation. Pastor Andrew, again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the Diamond Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Woo! Yeah! Just dropping wisdom like that, like it's nothing. Let's go.